I read a column, and I actually sort of had heard this story before. From Don Callis wrote a column about you and Andre the Giant back, I guess this would be in the early New Japan days.
Yeah, that's right.
What was the story about that?
Well, the story was they used to, Vince Sr. used to run the Madison Square Garden tournament, single tournament, and he had the team tournament. So he'd bring in all the big stars over, Dusty and Hogan and Giant and everything. So one day we were going to a town, and I was sitting in the front of the bus, and I was sort of half sleeping. I think Hogan was sitting behind me, and Dusty was on the tour, and Chavo Guerrero, and the Giant. Anyway, but he was in the back of the bus, and he started telling all these racist jokes. And I was like half asleep, and I woke up, and I heard all this nonsense going on. He's using throwing the N-word around left and right and center. So then I finally said, look, man, I said, hey, I don't like what you say. You know, if you a bigot, that's your problem. But you just watch what you say around me, you know. So the bus got really quiet. You could actually hear a pin drop. And so as the bus continued to go on, all of a sudden he spoke up, and with that deep voice, he said, hey, Alan, you know. And I said, yeah, he told me to go after myself, you know. So I told the bus driver, I said, pull the bus over. I said, if you want to talk to me like that, let's get off this bus. And I said, we can settle this now, man to man. I said, I don't care how big you are. If I have to take a beating, it's just a beating I'm going to have to take. But you are going to know that I was there, you know. So then, Stan Hansen was on the bus, too. So they said, no, calm down and everything. You know, it'll be okay. I said, no, I don't accept that from nobody. I said, I don't care who you are, what you are. I don't accept that talk from anybody. So then the next day, that night, we got to the hotel. And the next day, I was so irritated that night that I didn't sleep. And I got up the next day, and he came down for breakfast, and I told him, I said, come on, let's go outside. He didn't want to go outside. I said, no, let's go outside. We're going to talk this out, me and you, man to man, not around these assholes that are sitting here. And we went out, and I told him, and I said, look, and he was really big at that time, and I said, let me tell you something. I said, I don't like what you say. I said, you keep your racist jokes to yourself. You want to joke around with those other guys, that's fine. You don't do that around me. So then he said, well, you know, I'm Polish Dominican. I said, you never hear me make any racist remarks about anybody. I said, Andre, I don't care how big you are. I said, I'll get a baseball bat, chop you down the sides, and then kick your butt, you know. And after that, for a couple of years, we really never spoke. But just before he died, I ran into him in Mexico, and we actually straightened everything out. Became friends after that.
How was work in Mexico?
What sort of person was Andre, though? Because I've heard various stories about Andre. There's the stories that he was arrogant, stories that he was a racist at times. He had a run-in, I heard, with Badnews Brown once on a bus, that Badnews called him out, and Andre had made a racist comment towards Badnews Brown, and then he backed off when Badnews put it on him. You said that Andre taught you to have character in wrestling business and how to be a professional in the business. What was your relationship like with Andre, and what sort of person was he that you knew him?
Let me address the Badnews Brown story first, because I was sitting behind Badnews and Andre was behind me, so I was in the middle of them.
Just to say what I've heard, just before you explain the story, is that Andre had called Badnews the N-word, and as a result I heard that Badnews had called the bus driver to stop the bus, had gotten up and basically said to Andre, get your ass outside and let's settle this, and then Andre had backed down. So I'd like to hear your version of what actually happened.
It's really amazing to hear that. Not true at all.
Okay.
Andre was telling a joke with the N-word, and Badnews Brown was sitting in front of me, and Badnews Brown mumbled something under his voice. It's not too damn funny, Andre. And Badnews Brown started to go into his bag with his hand, and he had a little satchel, like a purse that he wore over his shoulder. I guess you'd call it a man purse. Yeah. Back in the day. I'd never seen one before. And he had this satchel over his shoulder, and he went to go in the bag, probably to get something, not a weapon.
Yeah.
And Andre said, you know, if you're pulling something out like a weapon, I'm going to stick it up your ass. But the bus was never stopped. He never called him out. But I've heard so many versions of the story, but I was sitting there between them. I was on the bus. I was in the seat between them, and that's all there is to the story.